So, you decided to witness my story. I am one of the most evilest ghost trains in the world because of my number and my motives. But I was never this kind of engine. I was once a kind engine, but after he had threatened me, I had decided that it was time to put him in his place. Hello, my name is Terry, and I am a Baltimore in Ohio, Class S1 210-2. I was built in 1914 along with the early versions of my sisters. We were designed to become one of the best locomotives in the Baltimore and Ohio, one of the very first railways in America. However, things didn't happen the way they did, and it involved me. Within the first week of my trial run, I began suffering from several accidents. Within the first 2 weeks of my career on my railway, I had killed 20 people. It wasn't my fault. I didn't know what was wrong with me. But people kept saying it was because of my number. What was my number? 6,666. The devil's number. I was nicknamed the Devil Engine because of my jinx. It was only 2 weeks into my service, and already my sisters didn't like me for this kind of reason. And so, the Baltimore, Ohio decided not to have me on their railway. So I was exiled from the railway. I was known as a Big Six due to my size. But with my size came trouble. And so, the Baltimore and Ohio decided to get rid of me within only the first several months of my career. At that time, I had suffered 45 accidents and I killed over 100 people. So, I was sent over to Sodor. At this time, Sodor had just lost its former controller due to a very serious accident. And with a new controller, they needed new engines. Though I was considered far too big to be on the railway, I was bought by Sodor and was transferred over by ship to Sodor. I arrived on January 27th of 1915. When I arrived on Sodor by ship, I was the largest engine on Sodor at the time, and I met several strange-looking engines. Me, being American, I arrived on the British Railway, and was very surprised to see 4 little boxy engines looking at me. I got to know them a good time. Their names were Clive, Neil, Roger, and Matthew. I also met 2 other members of this boxy greenish class. Their names were Claude, and the other one was named Jared. All 6 were very kind locomotives. However, they looked a bit odd to me, being an American engine. However, Jared did not like me because of my number, 6666. Though I still didn't want to cause any harm, I was immediately put to work, hauling freight and passenger duties. And then, in March of 1915, we got 2 new engines. Their names were Thomas and Edward. One of the most famous engines on Sodor, as you may know at this time. But my life was going to take a turn for the worst. I was pretty young at my time, and still, things did not go according to my story. And oh, how bad it was. Starting in July, I started suffering from many other accidents and was bullied a lot from the other locomotives. Mostly, they were engines that now were supposed to be on Sodor, but were bought just to help the Sodor grow. I can remember a few engines, but I'm not gonna say who they were. They were just those engines that didn't like me. Engines that despised me. I was bullied to no avail, and to make it worse, my accidents kept coming. I suffered from more and more accidents, and as of November of 1915, I had suffered nearly 100 accidents on Sodor, making me the Sodor Jinxed American engine. Still, many of the kids didn't want to go near me for my number 666. But some kids, too young to understand, would just come up to me and say hi. I enjoyed the company, and I rather could have good talks with them. But, for some reason, after they visited me, they began to fall ill, and then die. So parents had warned their children not to go anywhere near me. I was shocked. And then I stopped doing my work altogether. Starting from February 1916, I refused to do my work and would just sulk in the shed. The reason was that I had no faith in myself. I was the biggest engine on Sodor at the time, but was also a Jinx locomotive. I never wanted this to happen to me, but it was all because of my fangled number, 6666. I was called lazy, and so I was. With my work went my happiness, and I began to have a miserable, arrogant personality traits. It was so bad that the control at the time decided it was best not to own me, and I was exiled from Sodor. So, in June 1916, I went back to America. Immediately coming back to America, I found myself being bought by the Santa Fe Railroad. They need locomotives for their freight duties, and so they decided to buy me for a cheap price. Still, I told them about my number, but they didn't listen. All they cared about was finding an engine to do the job, and so I was sent back to American Railways to work. But my accidents kept continuing, week after week, month after month, and year after year. In 1920, I was finally taken off the line, considering being too dangerous to be even let out. And so, in 1920, I was placed in a railroad shed and forgotten. The engines that would go near me would shout rude things about me, and would say, "The baddest engine of them all is you, Terry. You will never be anything like us. You're just a Jinx locomotive. You're the devil's creation!" I was crossed. I didn't want to be treated like this. But one engine did like me. An engine that grew quite fond of me. She was a Pennsylvania Railroad Class E6, number 460, but we all know her now as the Lindbergh engine, due to her famous race against a plane. It happened in 1927, a little bit after the race. I was in my shed, just doing something to pass the time when she rolled in. To my surprise, she had said that she wanted to meet me. We talked, and then we started to like each other. And when I was finally let back out, for shunting duties of course, me and Lindbergh had a very, very good relationship. We were best friends. She was my first truly real friend. However, I missed being back on Sodor, for I missed Edward and Thomas and the others. I told Limber about this, and she said not to worry, as I might get my chance. And then, my chance did came. Throughout the majority of the 1930s, I was still in service, though for mere freight and shunting duties, and my jinx seemed to have gone away. Still, many people decided not to go near me for my number. I was still very, very sad about this, but Lindbergh was still very kind for me. And then, one day, in 1939, I received a notice for something I would never forget. Sodor had decided to buy me yet again, this time to help with the war effort, as the war was starting to wage in Europe, and soon it would transfer to Britain, which owned Sodor. And so, I said goodbye to Limber for what will be my very last time I saw her. Little did I know was that I would be dead within the next year. I arrived back on Sodor in March of 1939. Well before the war had started, but when tensions were very high. By the time I was back on Sodor, I met a whole lot of new friends, and I decided that no more I was exiled 6666 Terry. I was now a more careful, caring engine, and I worked my hardest. I helped with the war effort, hauling many military trains to and from Sodor. But that was when he came. He was a Standard 5 locomotive, number 73165. His name was merely Smith, and unlike the other engines, except a very few, Smith was a horrid engine. He treated me like a piece of scrap, saying that even though I was an American locomotive, and that I was more powerful than he was, I was out of date, and that he was a much better locomotive. I remember one day he called me a piece of molten scrap metal. He even called me a mongrel. I was very horrified that he would call me this way. All I was trying to be nice and caring towards him, but no. He decided to treat me like nothing. He even called me by my number, 6666. I had enough with him by 1940. The war was still continuing, and I knew he wasn't going to leave Sodor, as he was being used for the war effort as well as me. Then one night, I remember it happened. He had purposely made me take the wrong train to Vickerstown. Even though it wasn't my fault, and the controller knew about this, Smith called me nothing worse than a piece of ultimate trash. That's when I decided that I had had enough. I wasn't going to let a small British locomotive despise me, an American locomotive. And so, I decided to plan my revenge on Smith. Oh no. It's not a revenge that you would think. I decided to make up a plan. A deadly plan. It was September 4th, 1940. Smith was refilling at the water tower. Little did he know was that I had told my driver to contaminate the water. So, when Smith pulled away with a heavy goods train, Later on that night, I followed close behind, though I stopped at Wellsworth when he was past it. I knew he wouldn't get very far, and that was exactly what happened. Smith had stalled outside of Wellsworth, not going very far. He was in a miserable state and wanted to get back home as soon as possible, but he couldn't for the contaminated water in his boiler. So, his driver and fireman went to get help. That left him all alone. My chance had come. So, as soon as the driver and fireman were back at Wellsworth, where I was hiding, I silently went past them and went on to meet Smith. I'll tell you, Smith was very surprised to see me pulling about alongside him. Well, 6666, you decided to show up? He said. Oh, really, Smith? I said. What's happened? None of your business. I'm just resting, that's all. Oh, well, I replied. I guess I'll leave you then. No, wait, please. I'm stuck. Something's wrong with my boiler. Can you give me a push to the next station? Of course, I replied, knowing my plan was steadily put in action. Please, we must take my train to the next station. There I can... No, Smith. Let's leave your train here. I'll collect it by myself once we're done. But first, you need to be taken to Crovan's Gate to be looked at. Oh, okay, Smith replied. And so, he was uncoupled from his train and was put aside. Then I coupled up behind him and I pushed him along the line. My crew was unaware of my intentions. I just had a plan, and they would have to be involved in it. And that plan was to kill Smith. I steadily pushed the Standard 5 along the tracks at a slow speed. Hey, 6666, you're gonna make us late. Relax, Smith. We'll be there in plenty of good time. I was in an emotional trance. Then, I saw that there was a junction up ahead. Once the fog was misty, and I could see the siding that led to the Kronk scrapyard. The other went straight to Crovan's Gate. Oh, here we are. Let's just go straight ahead, said Smith. But we didn't go straight ahead. We went the other way. The way to the Kronk scrapyard. Hey, Terry, you do know we're supposed to be going to the Crovan's Gate, right? Smith said. I know that, Smith, he replied. I replied. I'm just taking you for a special shortcut I found a few days ago. I silently laughed, though he didn't hear me. And silently, without him knowing, I started to pick up the pace, going a bit faster and faster. What are you playing at? My driver said. I didn't listen, and so I pushed him onwards. Terry, I don't think we're near Crovan's Gate. I think we need to go back. We're fine, I said. Then, Smith then noticed ahead a smokestack. It was a smokestack to the Kronk scrapyard. Smith, we're at the Kronk scrapyard. This is not Crovan's Gate, I said. He said. That's when I put my plan in motion. I surged forward. Terry, what are you doing? Smith cried. I didn't listen. I started to go faster and faster. Smith, Terry, please stop! He cried. I blew my whistle to ignore him. We charged into the smelter shed. That's where a huge pot of molten lava was at. But in front of that was a tanker of flammable fluid, of oil. It would explode if we hit it. I didn't know it was there, but I grinned as I saw it. "Please, Terry, stop!" cried Smith. He applied his brakes, but they were no use. He had no driver or fireman. "Please, Terry, what are you doing? Please stop, you're gonna kill us all!" cried my driver. I didn't listen. "You're going to murder us!" said Smith as he let out one final blow of his whistle. As we approached the end of the smelter's yard, I shouted out my last words, but it wasn't in my voice. "Revenge is mine." Oh yes, I did the unthinkable. I killed myself, Smith, and my crew. The whole building of the scrapyard had obliterated in a huge explosion. The fire was not put out until afternoon the next day. They found wreckage of Smith, but there was only one thing left of me, my number plate. That's when they fully understand that it was me who was along with them in the tragedy. What was left of my firebox contained the remains of my crew. It's unknown how they got there, but it's twisted pleasure. My number plate is now in a museum on Sodor, and me and Smith's remains, or whatever was left of us, were scrapped. But that's just the beginning. 4 years since my death, I have hunted the Grand Quarry and scrapyard. 3 years later, I killed my first victim, a locomotive called Rachel. And every year since, any human or engine that ventures into the scrapyard that is not worthy of being there, they have all been killed by me. I am now a vengeful spirit of what I once was. The Big Six will live on. I will hunt my victims until all of Sodor have been gone. And then I will bask in my glory. And then you will face my next victim. I will not let anyone escape my wrath. One by one, all of them will be gone. And then it will be time to feast on their souls of the scrapyard. Ah ha 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 ah! The rules for my sighting is very simple. First, a blanket of fog rolls in, and then you hear puffing noises. And then you'll hear my whistle sounding 3 times. There is one thing you can do. though you'll be very unsuccessful at it. And